Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about forge welding in a propane forge. Okay, so there's lots of videos out there about forge welding in a coke forge or a charcoal forge. Most of us don't have that. Most of us are working with a propane forge. For one thing, this is very convenient. I can take this apart in seconds, and basically there's like a suitcase. I can carry this away, put this on a shelf, and it's out of my way until the next time I want to use it. Okay, so this is really compact, convenient. And this is what I work with, and this is what most of you guys out there doing your home projects are working with. Okay, so forge welding, right? Where you're getting two pieces of metal to combine into one. Okay, there's a couple of things that we're working with. One of which is not just hammering the two pieces together that you want to forge weld. Okay, because because a lot of times when we're shaping the metal. Okay, we have this idea that we're going to get it hot, and then we're going to hit it with these heavy 4-pound hammer blows, and that's what we do to get the metal to shape. Okay, but forge welding is not that. With forge welding, what we're doing is we're bringing these two metals together. We're getting it really hot, like white hot. Okay, and what's going to happen, these crystals are going to kind of combine. They're going to bond together, right? So the crystals on one side are going to bond to the crystals of the other side. Okay, so the project that I'm doing is basically I'm building another poleaxe. I already did a video on this. I'm going to improve upon this a little bit, and I'm making the top spike over here, right? So the top spike is what comes down. Basically, the legs come over the shaft over here, and they lock the axe or the hammer in place. So the way I've created this, okay, is basically I've started off with a bar like this. It can either be a straight bar, or it could be an L or an L bar. It doesn't matter. I've cut the legs here, right? So these two legs are what are going to come over the shaft over here, okay? But now I gotta create the blade, okay? To create the blade, these two pieces need to come together and forge weld into one piece, okay? That's going to be really solid, and I can, put a blade, I can put an edge on it, and I can thrust with it, and it's going to be really strong, okay? So there's two ways I could have gone about this. I could have either started with a solid piece and then split the legs up, okay? So that's one way I could have done it, or I can do it the way I'm doing with it here, okay? I'm doing here. So we're essentially working with the resources that we have available to us, okay? So I happen to have metal, this type of metal available to me. That's what I'm working with. So it's easier for me right now and cheaper for me to do it this way, okay? So one of the things to know when it comes to forge welding, okay, we need heat, we need pressure, okay, and an important part here is to we're working with oxygen and fire. So oxygen is essentially the lover of fire. Okay, fire loves oxygen, but oxygen is the enemy of steel. Okay, so oxygen is what rusts steel under normal room temperature. Okay, but what happens is if you get the steel really hot, like yellow, white hot, and then you pull it out, it like immediately scales. Okay, so that scaling is basically oxidation. It's rust. It's like, rust that has really sped up. So that is really bad, because for forge welding, if we have oxidation, or scale that builds up in here, what that's going to do is it's going to form a boundary where the two pieces, when they come together, they can't crystallize. They can't basically form a bond in between them. Okay, so we can't have any scale that forms up in here. And for people like, okay, a lot of times people aren't sure what the scale is. It's flakes. Okay, these black flakes that form on this, and that you can brush off. Okay, those flakes are what are going to prevent your metal from forge welding. Okay, now you can forge weld pretty much steel of any thickness. However, the hotter steel, not the hotter, the thicker steel is going to retain heat a lot better. So a steel that's thicker and retains heat better is going to give me more time to get from the forge over to the anvil before it starts cooling down. Okay, so a thin steel like this, as soon as I pull it out of the forge, this thing starts cooling down. Okay, so that's if you're trying to forge weld with thin steels, like I mostly forge weld with, because that's mostly what I have available to me, right? You're gonna have a problem, because as soon as it comes out of the forge, even though it's white hot in there, even if you've got no scale or oxidation, as soon as it comes out, it's already cooled down. Okay, so the forge welding has to happen inside of the forge. That's where it's got a forge weld. Okay, so the way we're going to do it, okay, first of all, what I did here is, if you see the two sides that I got coming together here, I gave it a mirror finish. Okay, now it probably doesn't need to be a mirror finish, but I'm not leaving anything to chance here. I basically just I used the sand wheel, and I gave this a mirror finish, so I know the mirror basically tells us that it is super smooth, okay, versus like this side over here, which is a lot rougher. So we got a mirror finish, so I know I got two surfaces that I know are going to want to mate together, and the crystals are going to be able to easily bond. Okay, so what I'm going to do is once I fire up this forge here, and I'm doing it now without it on so you guys can hear me more easily. It's a 2-burner forge. I've got the back completely bricked off, and I'm going to put the bricks here about like that, about 2 inches apart. Okay. Okay. So here's the thing: we don't want oxygen. We want as little oxygen in there as possible. We need to get oxygen in there initially in order to get this hot. Okay. So initially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my chokes up here. Right, these are my chokes up here. I have them almost completely open, so that lots of oxygen can get in there, and I can get the inside white hot. Okay, it's probably best if you do this on a cloudy day so that you can actually see the colors better. Today's a sunny day, but I've done this a number of times, so I know what I'm looking for. So what we're going to do is we're going to get this. We got the chokes open. We're going to brick this up. We want the entire thing inside to get white hot. Okay. Then once we get up to temperature, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to close the chokes. Okay. So now there's less oxygen going in there. Okay? I'm going to keep this closed in the front here. So I'm depending more on that insulation, and I want as little oxygen going in there as possible. So the flames are actually going to, instead of burning out here, they're going to be burning in there. So we're not going to have flames coming out here. It's going to make a very different sound, but I want to be sure that there's no oxygen, there's little oxygen in there as possible. Blacksmiths that work with coal forges, they kind of do the same thing. Like what they'll do is they'll billow first, right, or push air through their forge first. They'll get it hot, and then they'll stop pumping. Okay, and then what they'll do is when they put the metal in the fire, they use like small pieces of coal, and they cover up the piece, right, with as many small pieces as possible, so that the coal is actually preventing the oxygen from getting to the steel. Okay, so we don't have coal in there, so we just have to prevent the oxygen from getting in there, or rather, we want the oxygen burning up entirely inside the forge, so as little of it as possible can get to the steel. Okay, so initially I'm going to be running both of these burners. Okay, usually when I'm doing like the shaping and stuff like that, I'll basically take this off and I'll work with it like this, only using one burner. It just saves propane. And what I'll do is I'll actually take some of these bricks and I'll brick up the half of it inside, because the more I reduce the airspace inside, so again, it gets hotter faster. But for forge welding, I'm going to be running both of these burners. And the reason why I put this off to the side like this, I'm only using one, is because I don't want the heat rising and damaging my valves. Okay. Right now we're going to be using both of these. Let's keep that like that. So yeah, we're going to start off with both of them on full, chokes completely open. We're going to get that white hot inside. Then I'm going to close the chokes. I'm going to put this in there initially just to get this kind of red hot. The purpose of getting this red hot is so that I can actually fold the two pieces together. Okay. So before I do that, I'm going to take some of this borax. I'm going to sprinkle a little borax into my steel, and that helps the forging. Historically, they use like crushed up seashells and stuff like that. So yeah, using something like borax is not, you know, I mean, there's a long historical precedent for using something like it to help the welding process. So I'm gonna put the borax in there. While it's just red hot, I'm gonna hammer this closed. Closing this is going to also prevent oxygen from getting in there, right? Because I don't want oxygen going in there and corrupting my weld. So by closing it, it's gonna serve that purpose. So once it's closed, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back in there, and I'm going to let it sit in there for about 10-15 minutes. I'm going to let this get white hot. The forge welding is actually happening inside the forge. It's not happening outside by me hammering this together. So there's a distinction here. There's a difference between getting the metal hot for the purpose of shaping it and getting the metal hot for the purposes of forge welding. Okay, you're not going to forge weld this together by beating it to death. Okay, the fire is what's going to take care of that. We just need to get the pieces really smooth so that they'll form crystals. Get them close, really close together, so that they'll form those crystals, and give it lots of heat with low oxygen to get it to the point where it's white hot. I'll probably do this like 3 times to make sure that this actually, you know, but again, the taps that I'm giving it, they're more like taps. You guys will see what I do. They're not like gigantic hammer blows that are designed to like flatten this out. That's not what's going to forge weld this. Okay. So yeah, those are the components that we need to get this propane forge weld to forge weld. Okay. So let's fire this thing up. I'm gonna actually pause the camera and I'll get this all set, and we'll make it happen. Hey, while that thing's heating up, I wanted to mention that historically, the way if you had 2 pieces of metal that you wanted to forge weld, the way they did it is they used like wire to wrap it together and hold it together. Okay. Now the other way you can do it, they would also fold it down upon on top of itself, which is the technique that we're going to use today. We're going to fold this down, but there's many ways that you can fold it this way, but folding it down on itself is a good way to hold the 2 pieces together. Modern bladesmiths, what they'll do is they'll tack weld the pieces together to kind of hold them in place. That's a modern technique that people will do. Okay, but yeah, we're gonna use the method where we fold this down on itself, and that's what's gonna keep the 2 pieces that we've smoothed touching each other. Okay. Is that red hot yet? Yeah. So at this point, I just need to get that red hot in there, so I can bring these 2 ends together. Let me pause the camera for a second. Yeah, what I actually did is I brought my 2 bricks even closer together, because right now it's pulling in enough air from the chokes that I have completely open. So I'm just trying to get the temperature up inside. Okay? So here's the thing, and this is an important part. We want to get the forge hot. The way I did it when I did this the first time is I said, hey, why waste heat? While that's heating up in there, why not stick this in there so that while that's heating up, this is slowly heating up with it. Well, what's happening with that is that it's giving this thing more time to oxidize. Okay? So we actually want this in there, like we want it to go in there ready to come together. Okay? And what we want to do is, especially with the thin pieces, we want the in and out of the forge to be as minimal as possible, because every time you go in and you come out, when it comes out, you get that oxidation. So what that means is you're losing metal. Okay, so especially when you're working with a thin piece like this, or a relatively thin piece, you don't want to go in and out a lot of times, because every time you go in and out, you're burning off some of that steel. Okay, so historical traditional blacksmiths, they started off with, they would start off with a thicker piece of steel. So if they lost some of it, it wasn't a bigger deal. Most of the steel that we're able to buy cheaply is the thinner stuff. So that's not something that we can afford to waste away. So we want as little oxidation as possible. We want to lose as little steel as possible with this, okay? Let me see if my camera's running. This should be hot enough right now that I can at least get that red. And what I got here is I got my borax ready. I have it, you know, ready to like put in there. Set that up. We take a look at the forge and see if it's almost white in there. It's pretty white in there. So again, now we're just getting it heat red hot, right? Just so that we can actually just bend this together. And what I did is I pointed the spine up so that the heat blast is coming down on it, which is going to, you know, because that's the area that basically I want to bend. I'm gonna basically, as soon as it comes out, I'm gonna brush this because there's gonna be some scale that probably forms. Brush this off because, like I said earlier, you know, rust or scale is the enemy of forge welding, right? So that's what's gonna prevent those two surfaces from bonding to each other. Water over here. Keep it handy so that you can pull up the tongs. Almost no scale on that. Okay, it's already cooled down a little bit. Put some of this stuff in there. You can see it bubbling. All right, now I'm going to use my hammer here to basically close this. So when you're hammering, start from one side, bring it across to the other side. Don't like hammer here, because that's gonna cause this thing to open up. You know, start from one side because we're just trying to close this. I just wanna, I'm not 100% convinced that it's fully closed. I'm just gonna get it red hot again, just so that I can hammer it a little bit more for the purpose of making sure it's closed. And then after that, I'm going to close my chokes. Okay, so you can hear the sound of the fire change now, because now there's less oxygen in there. I think you're ready to work now. Closing off. As long as my flame's not blowing out, I've pretty much closed this off completely, so it's only getting a little bit of oxygen from the choke valves. So we're going to let this thing sit now for about 15 minutes in there, because this is now where the forge welding is happening. While it's in there, and we just got to give those crystals a chance to grow. Okay, give them a chance to form. So I plan to do this 3 times. Okay. Let it sit for about 15 minutes, and then I just repeat it 3 times. Let me see if I can get away with closing my chokes a little bit more. Nope. Okay. So what happened is when I went to close them a little bit more, there was actually a flame that just started. The flame actually came outside, like not like the dragon's breath, but it was just like coming out like that. So I said, okay, I went a little bit too far with that. So that's probably a good place for this to be. So it's closed off, it's insulated, it's got minimal oxygen in there. Okay, so we gotta give this thing 15 minutes now to let those crystals grow. And while that's happening, I'm gonna work on something else. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna turn that barrel. I'm not gonna take it out yet, but I'm just gonna turn it over. Make sure it gets heated on both sides, which I'm sure it has, because I can see it's white in there. So it's a solid white in there. This time it was a lot out in the oxygen a lot longer, so the whole thing had a chance to scale. Now here's the thing, I mean, when you look at this, it looks like, I mean, you can see the separation there. That's because these pieces didn't exactly fold over perfect. But what's going to happen is when I grind this down, it should be almost impossible to tell where the separation is, right? Right now we can see it because they didn't fold over perfect. But this piece is good for now. Let's put this on the side.